I'm going to show you one camera angle trick that will make your GT7 images look heroic and aggressive. Just mix it up with a few cars, give us some options for the replay. Actually, this Mitsubishi just in front right now, this can make some nice options. Alright, there we go. So we just put a couple of laps in there. We're going to head straight into this replay and we're going to try and see if we can find some options for an image and show you exactly how you can shoot something super heroic looking. Yeah, as we go around the track, I'm just watching the way the shadows are falling, trying to look for some sort of moment that I think might work as an image. And I'm particularly interested in this Mitsubishi we've got just up ahead here, because I think there's a point there, there's a couple of moments there actually that it's going to give us something we can work with. And ideally I'm looking for something with a little bit of backlighting. Okay, let's have a look at this point in time. So at the moment I'm just kind of having a look around. Now just because I'm driving the Subaru doesn't mean I can't have the focus on the image of the Lancer. So that is something we can definitely do, and I think we might actually do that this time. So I'm just going to line up just behind the shadow here, and you can see as we have a look around here, as I bring this down right onto the track level or the surface level, you essentially give the car that sort of heroic look. Now, if I just lock this off, so we're in walk mode, we can just adjust this image a little bit to frame it a little bit better, and we'll put a little bit of a tilt on it. Makes it feel a little bit more kind of dynamic. First we should do actually, we should focus on the point of the car that we want in focus. Now I'm going to go with the back left wheel. Right, so we're just going to frame this up. Now for me it's important that I get this Subaru in the shot because it kind of tells part of the story of these two cars head to head down the straight. So we're just going to give that a little bit of a tilt. And I'm going to cut it off. In fact, I might just zoom in a little bit to do that. A little bit more tilt. Okay, a couple of things are sticking out to me that I don't like. The amount of glare. I am going to turn that not all the way down, but a fair way. I also like to add a little bit of film grain, so just 3 on the grain. Now the next thing is I am going to put some exposure compensation in, or as far as Gran Turismo is concerned, I'm going to overexpose the image. I'm not too bothered about the sky blowing out. I just want a little bit more detail in the car. So we'll go one stop over. Now the shot is running a little bit cool for me, so I'm going to warm that up a little bit. Now you might be wondering what the numbers are, the 3000K to 12,000K. That is a Kelvin rating, and that just dictates or will tell you how warm or cool a specific light source is. So we're running about 5800 Kelvin or K. Usually 5600 would be what's considered daylight. The next thing is I'm going to use the aperture to bring it down, which means I'm going to get less in focus. Then we're going to choose the mode 3 for panning. So this will follow the car in the best way so that all that motion blur outside of our car, or the car we're focusing on, which is the Lancer, will start to receive a little bit of motion blur. And we'll leave the shutter speed at 1/60th of a second, because as we can see, when we drop that down to 130, it comes up red, and that is telling us that you might not quite get your car that you're focusing on super sharp at such a low shutter speed, so we'll keep that at 160. So I think we've got that where we want it. We will hit shoot, and this image will render out. Wow, that's pretty cool. I am fairly happy with that. You can see what we're talking about. We're locked on the Lancer. The track is certainly all motion blur. There's a little bit of motion blur in the car we were driving, which is the Subaru, and there's a feeling of speed running into the distance and these two cars facing off against each other. And you can see we're under braking at the moment. There's a little bit of glow around the brakes, which I really like. And then you've got all that backlighting from the sun, which is pulling this shadow all across the track. So that one is a keeper. It's time now to get stuck into the edit. So we've got the image here in Lightroom, and there's a few things that we are going to apply, a few effects, if you like. We are going to make some basic corrections or changes first. We're going to use the texture slider just to ramp up and give a little bit more grit to the image. I'm going to apply some blue to the shadows. We will give it a touch of vibrance, and that's about it for the basic sort of color corrections. Now, we kind of already dialed in the sort of white balance in Gran Turismo, so we don't really need to touch that here. But where this starts to get a bit more powerful is in the gradients that can be applied. The first one that I usually like to get in with is a radial gradient, and I will pull out, or I'll select the back end of this Mitsubishi, and this mask here that you can see, this red area, that's going to allow me to only change the exposure on that area. So I can change a multitude of different things, but I'm just going to touch the exposure, and then I'm going to run a bit of extra black on there. Now, there's hardly any bit depth in these images that you might shoot in game, so there's not much latitude for actual edits. So all these adjustments are very, very minimal, and at least that's the way I like to keep it. Ideally, I would like to run a gradient in the sky, but it's so blown out, there's absolutely no information for me to push and pull any pixels there. I think the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go down to the color mixer or the color grading panel, and I am going to put a little bit more blue into those shadows, and then I'm going to run a little bit of orange into the highlights. The final part, after I've made all those sort of subtle changes, is the clarity slider. Now, you have to be careful with the clarity slider. If you go too far, it can make it look very kind of overdone and fake. I'm just going to ramp that up, usually about 20 is as far as I want to take it. And that to me is what I'd kind of call more or less finished at that point. But we need to go in and deconstruct this image. So let's open it in Photoshop. Now, first of all, let's have a chat about what I don't like or what could have been better in this actual image. The first thing I'm looking at is this portion of this little car here. You can see that I've circled it. Had I paid a little bit more attention when I was shooting, I maybe would have changed the angle on this so I had only 3 cars in shot. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that. This region here, it is very sort of overexposed, and maybe I've taken that too far. But at the time I did feel that I needed it to get enough exposure through the car, or at least parts of the bodywork to show the shape of the car. So I'm willing to live with that. Now for the reason that this image, or to me, why I feel it works. So there's a lot of lead-in lines here. You can see this one coming in here. You've got the sweeping sort of blur of the motion blur on the track. You've got this shadow coming across here, you've got the railing coming down, and it's all circulating around this point, and that's the point where the car is moving into within that shot. Also, I really like this sort of tilt on the image. It feels almost like off-camber corner, which is exactly what we're kind of leading into in that first corner of Brands Hatch. I love the fact that we've got this Subaru sitting here. It kind of tells the story of these two sort of like facing off between each other. Keeping with that, we can see that the motion blur, or there's actual blur on that Subaru because the Subaru is moving at a different speed from the Lancer. So that tells a little bit of a story in the fact that we are overtaking that WRX, and you can clearly see that within the image. And finally, this dark portion of the image and these lead-in lines, they all lead into this sort of light part of the image, which is exactly how we're trying to lead the eye in and almost have you imagine where that vehicle is going and how it's cornering in. You can see that it's under braking with the brake lights on. So there we have it. This is my favorite image from that session. Now we can jump back into Lightroom. I've got a couple of the others here that we did shoot. The same idea. We've used that flat on the deck sort of angle for that heroic feeling. Now I actually do really like this one with the color of the ripple strips. Just as I flicked across here, we can actually see the before and after of the edit. So if I quickly flick between those two, you can see exactly what we've done in that edited image.